Okay, so let's dive into the absolutely wild story of a group that started out as 1960s Jesus hippies, became one of the most controversial religious movements in the world, and then, right on the brink of collapse, tried to pull off a radical reinvention for the digital age. The story of the Family International is really a story of constant, almost dizzying change. Just look at this timeline. The group has gone through at least 5 major name changes, and each one of these signals a huge shift in its identity and its doctrines. This isn't just rebranding, folks. This is basically a map of a very tumultuous 5-decade history. So, where did it all begin? Well, picture this. It's 1968, in the heart of Southern California's counterculture scene, Huntington Beach. There's this preacher named David Berg, and he starts ministering to the so-called Jesus people, hippies and dropouts who were looking for something more than mainstream society had to offer. Berg's message was intense, full of apocalyptic urgency. He preached that society was about to collapse and that his true followers had to forsake all. And this was not a metaphor. He meant literally give up everything, your possessions, your job, and even cut off contact with your family, and go live in these communal colonies to wait for the end of the world. And to really hammer home that isolation, Berg came up with this really powerful term, the system. This was their name for everything and everyone outside the group: governments, schools, churches, even your own parents. By defining the entire world as evil, he created this incredibly powerful us versus them mentality. It made everyone totally dependent on the group for everything. So as the group starts expanding all over the world, David Berg's authority becomes absolute. And he cemented his control not just with his personality, but with a unique and incredibly powerful tool that would end up defining every single aspect of his followers' lives. And then, in 1972, Berg drops this bombshell. He formally declares that he is an end-time messenger, a prophet whose words came directly from God. Now, this move took him from just being a preacher to being the one and only spiritual authority for his followers. His word was now, quite literally, God's word. So how did he deliver God's word? Through the Mo letters. For almost 25 years, Berg wrote nearly 3,000 of them. These letters became the absolute law in the community. They covered everything from doomsday prophecies to how to raise your kids to, yes, sexual conduct. For a lot of members, the Mo letters were even more important than the Bible itself. And it was in these very letters that Berg introduced his most radical and, frankly, most controversial ideas. He pushed the boundaries of traditional morality way out, arguing his followers were living under a new law of love that replaced all the old rules. And this led to the practice that would make them infamous. In 1976, Berg introduced flirty fishing. Female members were told to use sex as a tool for evangelism, to show God's love and win over male converts. The group, of course, defended it as this radical form of ministry, but critics, law enforcement, and countless former members called it what it looked like: religious prostitution. The sheer scale of this practice is just staggering, especially when you look at the group's own internal records. Over about 13 years, they reported over 220,000 sexual contacts. This resulted in more than 100,000 converts and somewhere between 10 and 13,000 children born into the movement, often with fathers from outside the group. I mean, just let those numbers sink in for a second. And tragically, this law of love also created an environment where systemic child abuse became horrifyingly common, something that's been documented in countless survivor testimonies and court findings. Berg's own writings, like the infamous Davidito book, even encouraged adult-child sexual contact. On top of that, kids were often raised away from their parents in communes and subjected to harsh disciplinary programs they called thought reform. And because the group often rejected modern medicine, many children suffered from severe medical neglect. So after years of allegations and police raids around the world, a British high court delivered this absolutely damning verdict in 1995. The court's investigation concluded that the group was, in fact, an authoritarian cult and confirmed that it had engaged in the systematic physical and sexual abuse of children. This was a huge legal turning point. Okay, so you've got that damning verdict, intense public pressure, and after David Berg dies in 1994, a lot of chaos inside the group. It was a perfect storm. The new leadership, led by his widow Karen Zerbe, knew the old way of doing things was completely unsustainable. So they orchestrated the group's most radical transformation yet, a move designed for one thing: pure survival. Now, this path to reinvention started right after Berg died. In 95, Zerbe introduced the Love Charter, which was a direct response to that court ruling, and it officially banned sex with minors. But the really huge change came in 2010 with something they called the Reboot, an event that would totally dismantle the entire communal model they had lived by for over 40 years. And the change was a complete 180-degree turn. Communal homes were shut down, shared finances were gone, and members were now expected to live on their own, get normal jobs, and send their kids to public school. They were supposed to rejoin the very system they had spent decades rejecting. The group literally transformed from a physical society into an online faith network. Some sociologists have a perfect term for this: a radical de-radicalization. It was basically a deliberate three-step process. First, get rid of the communes. Second, revise all the controversial doctrines to sound a lot more like mainstream Christianity. And third, move the entire community online, turning it from a high-demand cult into a virtual religion. So the big question is, what does the Family International even look like today, more than a decade after this digital reboot? I mean, did the transformation actually work? Well, this transition came at a massive cost. Without those tight-knit communal homes holding everyone together, their membership just fell off a cliff. The group has lost almost 3/4 of its members since the reboot started, shrinking from over 5,000 adults to just over 1,400 today. And the movement is facing another huge challenge. It's getting old, fast. As of 2021, almost 2/3 of the people still in the group are over the age of 60. You're basically looking at the original Jesus hippies, and the group has really struggled to bring in any new, younger members. So while the organization has technically survived, it's facing a really uncertain future. It's dealing with financial problems, it can't seem to recruit new people, and maybe most importantly, it's up against the powerful, relentless online activism of survivors who are dedicated to holding the group accountable for its past. The story of the Family International is this incredible case study in survival, but it really leaves us with this lingering question. In an age where the past is forever archived online for everyone to see, can any group truly reboot its history? Or are some legacies just impossible to escape?